Good morning.
You really ought to take this one, sir. Please, please. Oh, yeah, and now, as far as Mrs. Jessup is concerned, I won't say anything if you won't. Detective. What, Parker, what? Detective, there's this guy on line 1 who insists on talking to you. He won't give his name, and he's a real pain. Oh, God. Detective Tibbs, what can I do for you?
Well, for one thing, you cannot keep me hanging on the line for 10 minutes waiting for Fox to put me through.
Chief, is that you? You're back.
Yeah, I'm back. What do you think I'm calling?
All right.
Why in heaven's name you try to bust my eardrum?
I'm sorry. Welcome back, Chief. Welcome back.
Yeah.
Be quiet. Parker's dropping potato salad. I'm sorry, but somebody give me a little help. Chief! Hey, Chief! I got some of that latest chocolate deli. Careful what you touch. Parker Jameson?
It's a run.
You got it. Sweet. Take the kitchen. Mr. Tibbs. God. Breathing's labored. He has a pulse, but it's weak. Hey, Parker, call an ambulance.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. How are you today?
I'm doing good, doing good, doing
Great.
good. I'm trying to see if I can upload that. I made a copy of that presentation. I'm gonna see if I can pull it.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
I'm gonna see if I can pull it and put it into the chat so that they
Gotcha.
can download it.
Okay.
Is there a way? Do you know how to do that into the?
I think there's a little that little thing that looks like a page.
Yeah. Okay. I see. I see Google Drive, Dropbox, your computer. There you go.
Yeah.
I go before we get started, because then it can just
Okay.
go.
Yeah, I sent a note. I captured the email addresses from yesterday, and I was going to just combine the ones from today, and I could do like a mail merge and send them all out if you want to do it that way. But this is probably even better because they should be able to download it.
Right.
Yeah.
And then like I say, and then you can do the backup way, because sometimes if that don't work, then we can.
True. True.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
So how's Wendy Vernon and her family doing down there?
oh, they doing all right.
Good, good. Yeah, we enjoyed worshiping with y'all that year. I can't remember what year it was. I guess it was the year before COVID, though, I guess.
Yeah, it had to be.
Mm-hmm.
It had to be.
Yeah, we had a ball down there. Oh, I see it.
Yeah, put it in a PDF file and made it kind of easier to
Right.
transfer over to anybody's system. They can just pull it and then see the pull all the slides up.
Excellent. So people are still entering. We got a couple minutes. I guess we'll start right at 11:45. We actually have a mobile food pantry today
Oh yeah.
on site. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Everything's in motion. The truck usually gets here late, but it's early today.
Hey, I see Brother Haley on the line. Brother Haley, how you doing?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
Oh, I'm hanging in there, man. Hanging in there.
We're good.
Yeah.
I was surprised to see you on here.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I've been I was charged they say a charge to keep I have and a God to glorify.
All right.
Yes, sir.
So Dr. Kaufman, how do you want to do questions today? We were instructed to like alert you in like 10 minutes till.
Okay. Because we got 11:45, 12:45. Okay. Yeah, because I usually about 15 minutes for we got 15 minutes. We may have, depending on how fast I get through, because like I said, it's a lot today.
Okay.
And I'm glad I did get to the other piece, so to give me time to get through all of this, because especially when we talk about decision-making strategies, I'm probably have to slow down so they can take notes on because going through those steps to kind of understand those. So
right. Okay. Folks are still coming in.
Good morning. This is Darwin Howard. Before we get started, will Dr. Kaufman's email address be posted so that we can send a request for a copy of his presentation?
You can, but he's also put it in the chat already.
Okay, great.
So you should be able to click it and download it as well.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. Admitting. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started this morning. Good morning to everyone and welcome again to part 2 of Reaching Wholeness Through Church Conflict Resolution. We're certainly delighted and just grateful to be here again. We were enlightened and challenged yesterday during part one. I look forward today, Dr. Kaufman, to some practical steps to take toward building healthier church congregations and examining these strategies to help us manage it more effectively. I'm Deborah Wilson. I'm your class facilitator today, and it's my pleasure to welcome you here. Before I actually introduce or present the presenter again, I will say that later on, I will be pasting the link to Givelify and the address for General Baptist State Convention, because we always ask for you to continue to support the work of this convention. I will also ask everyone to mute yourselves while Dr. Kaufman is presenting. And if you are not muted, then I will mute you so that we can hear clearly what he is saying. So again, our presenter for today is the Reverend Dr. M.L. Kaufman, a native of Louisville, Kentucky. He has numerous educational and community accomplishments, and he's a veteran. So we thank you for your service, sir. Dr. Kaufman serves as the pastor of Tubman King Community Church in Daytona Beach, Florida, and he serves as the team chaplain at the Advent Health Hospital System in Daytona Beach and Smyrna, Florida. He's a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. He's also part of the Daytona Beach Black Clergy Alliance. So please join me this morning again in welcoming the Reverend Dr. M.L. Kaufman. Glad to have you, sir.
Okay, so you can enable the screen for me so I can get my presentation up.
Okay. All righty.
Okay. So there we go. All right, can everybody see? Let me see. Can everybody see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. All righty. All right. So yesterday we had went through some dynamics. We talked about anxiety. We talked about vision. We talked about how leadership can impact vision. We talked about how some sabotage can happen through revelation of secrets in that system, which would be normal. So we looked at, and then we looked at steps to what healthy congregations look like. We talked about them. I'm gonna just run through those real quick, and then we run into our next piece when we talk about developing congregational health. And so as yesterday, we started with healthy congregations, and I'll just flip to those 7 so you can just see those. Need boundaries, take responsibility, have resilience, practice clarity, read tone or mood, conflict, negotiation, and leadership development. Now, one of the things that we will talk about today in terms of effective leadership, there are 4 things here in terms of effective leadership that begin to help us build this, because on the first part of this, when we talked about leadership is critical in terms of developing the strength of the immune system within the organization, because that helps ward off the viruses. So the first thing is vision. Vision is you have to discover and articulate a shared vision. You have to discover and articulate a shared vision. What is a shared vision? A shared vision is a vision that is shared within people. Now, here's the thing, understanding that you know, and I know that when we talk about, and I'm a pastor and I can say this, and so I can say this, and so those folk who are not pastors can't say this, I can say this. Vision does come from the man of God. However, the man of God is not the only person, as when they begin to have the vision, the only person that can have input into the vision. And let me say this. If your ego cannot handle other people's input, then you're in the wrong business. Because the visionary must consider that if they're going to be an impediment to the vision. The visionary must consider if and how they will be an impediment to the vision. That's the first priority. This is why you have to discover and articulate a shared vision. And which brings up the next point, is that this is why you have to build a team to make the vision a reality. You know, you've got to develop a team. And pretty much, let me say it this way. And I want to say there's a difference between people who are trustworthy and yes men. I don't want yes men. I want trustworthy people. People who have yes men around them are weak-minded people. I'll say that again. People who have yes men around them are weak-minded people. I want trustworthy people. And the reason why is that I don't want you to tell me yes to everything and rubber stamp everything, because listen, if I'm walking forward and I'm going to say we need to go forward and there's a sinkhole there, I need you to tell me there's a sinkhole there. I don't need you to tell me, yeah, we can go forward. No, I need you to tell me there's a sinkhole there. If I say write the check and you say no, well, why? Because we ain't got no money. Well, that's a good reason to say no. You know, I don't need yes men around me. I need a faithful, dependable people around me. I don't need yes men. You know, yes men are for weak leaders. I want to say that. You know, you gotta if you like yes people around you, you need to check your ego. We want to say that. You're going to say that. I can say that. That's why you have to build a team to make the vision a reality. And the vision ought to be bigger than you, because the vision ought to outlive you. Integrity. You ought to make sure the vision is a reality for the leaders of the organization. Integrity is making sure the vision is a reality for the leaders of the organization. So in other words, the leaders of the organization have to buy into the vision. That's why the vision needs to be shared. Because if they don't buy into it, it's just a dream or an imagination. As you know, the old song, just my imagination once again, running away with me. That's what it's going to be. So there needs to be some integrity, which the leader has to make sure the vision is a reality for the leaders of the organization. And it's important because that's going to strengthen the immune system. Culture. You have to communicate and symbolize the vision through the organization's culture. You have to communicate and symbolize the vision through the organization's culture. That's why the vision has to be shared, because you need people that's going to be able to communicate it and symbolize it to people throughout the organization so that it infiltrates the culture of the organization. All right. Now, in doing this, how do we sharpen the congregational vision? Because you need to do this to strengthen the immune system. Envisioning. This is your stake in the vision. So you've got to have an envisioning. So you got to ask the question, what is your stake in the vision? You've got to create people have to have stake in the vision. So you got to ask, what is your stake in the vision? Visioning is a theology for ministry. In other words, what is what does it say? What is your belief about God that says, that gives this foundation for the ministry that you do? What does it say, or what does the belief say? Or let me say it this way. The ministry that you do, what is the foundation? What is the foundational belief in God that supports the ministry that you do? If you feed the hungry, what is the foundational belief? Why? Because Jesus feeds the hungry. Jesus cares about the hungry. What's the foundational belief for that? I'm sure you find scripture support for that. What is it that you find in scriptural reference, biblical support that gives theological framework for your ministry? This is part of visioning. And thirdly, envisioning. Envisioning is congregational dreaming. Envisioning is congregational dreaming. Now, in congregational dreaming, there's a couple of things I want to talk about. We're going to look at the health cycle sequence, and we're going to also look at the steps for defining and how to share that dream. Now let's look at the health cycle model. First of all, the dreams. Dreams, this is where, if you see on the health cycle model, dreams is where this gives birth to the congregation. Beliefs is where they provide a doctrinal agreement for congregational action. This is where you provide a doctrinal agreement for congregational action. This is the foundation of your doctrine that sets forth for your congregational action. Church goals extend to the congregation's shared dreams and beliefs. Church goals extend the congregation's shared dreams and beliefs. And the structure organizes the congregation for pushing its goals and advancing its dreams. And then you see at the top, or the apex of the health cycle, is the ministry shows the congregation does three things: reaching out to others, developing its members, and living out its dreams. Reaches out to others, develops its members, and living out its dreams. Now you can see, I'm gonna just start on this first half. You can see if you have no dreams, but you got beliefs and no structure, then what do you think happens to the ministry? You kind of flounder. But if you have structure, no dreams, no set beliefs, and no real goals, guess what happens to the ministry? You become bureaucratic. And everything just centers around your structure. But if you see, everything builds off of the other. And this is when you begin to understand what purpose is all about. And this is important when you have to understand conflict, because it goes back to understanding why you exist and what purpose serves each other. Now, nostalgia, when you start getting to the other side, nostalgia reflects a wistful longing for a comfortable past, whether it's real or imagined. You see some people in some churches that remember the glory years of the church when they were 900 members and they're now 50. And then they keep trying to pressure the leadership or the pastor to get back to the 900 members. They keep trying to go back to the 900 members. But never mind, the whole landscape has changed now. Factories have left, jobs have left, people have left, but they want to get back to when they used to be. That's nostalgia. Questioning marks the point of no return for the congregation. whether that's organizationally, or either the church redefines and is revitalized by its dream, or its rate of decline speeds its slide into disease. So questioning marks the point of no return for the congregation. Organizationally, it's either the church redefines and is revitalized by its dream, or its rate of decline speeds its slide into disease. And that means they're starting to die. Point blank. The next phase is polarization. That creates an organizational climate in which church members mistake one another for the enemy and fall into conflict. And then they go to drop out. That results when the dream of effective ministry in this place dies and members retreat into inactivity. Now, and let's look at steps to defining and sharing the ministry dream. How can church be involved, or the congregation be involved in dream planning? These are the questions you have to ask to begin to help define this process. What is our basic purpose? And I think when you begin to ask this, and I think you need to get a group of your most critical thinkers together and begin to start these questions and begin to hone this out as we go through. And you'll make more sense as we get through this process, though. What are the unique resources of our congregation? What resources do you have? You know, what is it that you do have? You know, a lot of times we'll focus on what we don't have, but what is it that you do have? You know, do you have money? Do you have people? Do you have people great help? Do you have facilities? Do you have what resources do you have? You know, particularly that provides for ministry. What resources do you have? You know, there's five things: time, money, manpower, space, and material. So what resources do you have out of those five? Time, money, manpower, space, and material. What are the unusual needs of our constituency? What are the unusual needs of our constituency? What community does the church sit in? To whom the church serves? Because see, you know, a church ought to be able to be at a point, you know, when you look at your constituency, who does your church serve? Because there are, you know, a lot of times now there are churches that sit in communities that it doesn't serve the community anymore. A lot of people commute way from outside the community and go to the church, and then they want to grow to the church, but they're out of touch with the community. That all the people who go to the church are from another community. And so then how do you begin to look at this? Because these are questions you have to ask when it comes to really talking about dealing with ministry. So what are unusual needs of your constituency? And how can we focus our dreams? How can we focus our dreams? And I'm I'm gonna show you some scriptural images of the church on the next slide in a minute after I ask this last question. How can we focus our dreams? And how do we plan making our dream a reality? How do we plan making our dream a reality? Because you got to plan for that. You know, these are some things that you have to sit down and develop a strategic plan for. Now, in answering that fifth question, excuse me, we're going to talk about some images of the church. Body of Christ. Chosen people. People of God. People of light. Priesthood of believers. Salt of the earth. Stewards. Temple of the living God. Now, these are some images of the church. So this begins to set the platform of how do we focus our dreams. And see, when you look at those, what theological implications does those images have? And this is something your pastor can help, ferret those things out. When you begin to set that, dream, when you begin to focus what the dreams of the congregation is. Now, here's where we come to the decision-making strategies. After we've talked about developing our visions and sharpening those things, this is what helps us develop our immune system. This is what strengthens our immune system. Now, when we get into this part of the conflict, here's some decision-making strategies that we need to have. We talked about how to strengthen some things and looked at what healthy congregations look like. Now, when we get into the mud, these are some things we need to look at, okay? And this is what I'm gonna spend the bulk of the time on. Collaboration. Now, those of you are taking notes, and so, because there's some other sub things I'm gonna talk about in several of these items I'm gonna list. There's about 12 items I'm gonna list, but there are several sub things I'm gonna talk about, and collaboration is one of them. This is how when we talk about managing conflict, collaboration. First of all, in collaboration, there needs to be some clear ground rules. Clear ground rules. Second of all, there needs to be an agreement as to who will participate. One of the things that and I'm gonna say this oftentimes with churches is particularly this happens when they begin to call it a new pastor. They don't scrub the list. The church list, they just let everybody who ain't been to church in 2-3 years, don't know what's going on, and let everybody come in and vote, and ain't nobody participate, paid no money, did nothing, don't know what's going on, and want to pick, and then it creates a bunch of confusion. And so, you gotta set up front agreement as to who will participate. That's why it's got to be clear ground rules. Agreement as to who will participate. Ample time to work through issues. You got to take ample time to work through issues. Now, give you time to write that down. And fourth thing is you need the participation of all key leaders. So you need the participation of all key leaders when you collaborate. And you also need, when you collaborate, clarity as to the process to be used. Clarity as to the process to be used. And in collaboration is part of collaboration is that you hope that the group will find a mutually satisfying solution. That's part of what collaboration is supposed to do, is that it hopes you find a mutually satisfying solution. So in collaboration, you find clear ground rules. It's an agreement as to who will participate, ample time to work through issues, participation of all key leaders, clarity as to the process to be used, in hopes that the group will find a mutually satisfying solution. Second is negotiation. Now, this happens when collaboration fails. You have to have negotiation. Negotiation is all about beginning to find a win-win solution. One of the things that I'm also certified conflict mediator by Department of Defense. Certified, did the training. One of the things that they trained us in conflict mediation, conflict workplace mediation, is that, you know, you see what both parties want, and based on what both parties want, you take the common ground of both parties and you propose to them grounds for what both parties want, and you see that, and so they can come to the middle ground, which means in negotiation you have to give up something for the betterment of the group, because it's not always what's best for you, it's what's best for the group. So you use negotiation when collaboration fails. Voting. Voting is to be used as a last resort. And when voting happens, costs are usually high. When voting happens, costs are usually high. Avoiding. Now, avoiding is only used as a short-term measure, but it might be appropriate under the following conditions. People are fragile and insecure. Another decision needs to be made first. The decision isn't important. And differences are irreconcilable, and confrontation will not resolve anything. So avoidance should be used as just as a short-term, interim or short-term measure. And it just only should be appropriate probably under these conditions, is when people are fragile and insecure, when another decision needs to be made first, the decision isn't important, and differences are irreconcilable, and confrontation will not resolve anything. Bringing in outside help is another measure, strategy. And here's some clues when outside help is needed. Clear differences have emerged, and no progress seems to be made when the various groups get together. So you know, there are some real stark differences, and no matter, even the differences are there, you know, you got these two polarized sides, and no two twain shall meet. And no matter how much you try, and it seems like no progress is gonna happen that night, or several nights that you've tried. When you tried collaboration, negotiation, none of that has worked. And you tried several attempts at it. And various groups have gotten together, and still no consensus, no nothing. Probably need to bring in outside help. Also, you need to bring in outside help when it feels as if people have lost control and the meetings are frightening. When it feels as if people have lost control and the meetings are frightening. Why? Because people are in their anxiety has taken over. Because remember, they're operating in the brainstem, fight or flight. They're not in their neocortex. They're operating in paranoia, not metanoia. They're operating in out of mind, not in their right mind. Because remember, in the neocortex is where the Christian values lie. And you need to bring in outside help. Also, you need to bring in outside help when parties are not speaking to one another. When parties are not speaking to one another. Also, when conversations are characterized by attacking and blaming. And I'm sure some of you all have seen probably some, and I have too, some church fights, if you will. You can say fights. Are characterized by attacking and blaming. It's time to bring in outside help. And by the way, let me say, since it ain't nothing but us on the line, there's no shame in asking for help. There is no shame in asking for, because oftentimes we just like in our family, we need to keep our business to ourselves. No, there's no shame in asking for help. Especially somebody that knows what they're doing. Also, we bring in outside help when various people are trying to get the judicatory executive into their camp. When various people are trying to get the judicatory executive into their camp. That's when they're trying to get the decision maker on their side. They're trying to get the favor. Are trying to steal the favor. Right. Praise his holy name. You also need to bring in outside help when giving and participating have dropped off. And usually when giving and participating have dropped off, usually distrust has reached its height. Because remember that, also when we talked about it and some of the things when anxiety, there's paranoia about your intentions. When that paranoia is about your intentions, there's a lot of distrust going on. So when giving and participating have dropped off. So we bring in outside help when clear differences have emerged and no progress seems to be made when various groups get together. It feels as if people have lost control and meetings are frightening. Parties are not speaking to one another. Conversations are characterized by attacking and blaming. Various people are trying to get the judicatory executive into their camp. Giving and participating have dropped off. Also, another decision-making strategy is having all parties stay in the action. having all parties stay in the action. Because sometimes you just have to work it out. You know, some people, one of the things also, you know, I got other tools in my toolbox about conflict. I got several things to do conflict. I've got other instruments assessments I can give people to find out how they actually handle and deal with conflict. Actually, I did in the Zion Association for the layman, I actually did a workshop and individual a workshop for the layman, and they actually took an assessment to see how they handle conflict individually, and we looked at it and saw how each individual person handled conflict, and some people handle it by, you know, competing, collaborating, compromising, accommodating, or avoiding. And we looked at the strengths and weaknesses of each particular style of handling conflict. And what does it say about that particular style of handling conflict? And sometimes you got to stay in there and hang it out, as they say. Tough it out, hang it out. You also got to help groups feel empowered. You have to help groups feel empowered, because part of some of the problem is sometimes people don't feel like they have any kind of say, any kind of influence, any kind of say. And when you help them feel empowered, that they feel like they have a part in something, have a stake in something, it also helps reduce some of that conflict. It's just like in couples counseling. If half the battle is allowing the couples to feel like they've been heard. And if they felt like they've been heard and they recognize that they've been heard, then you can kind of diffuse a lot of stuff. Clearly define problems. You have to clearly define what the problems are. Because a lot of times, a lot of the conflict is muddled up in the emotional context. And you can get caught up so much in the emotional context that you miss what the problems really are. So you have to sit back and deal with the emotional context and diffuse the emotional context so you can get people to hear what problems really are that they're arguing about or what they're arguing over. Find the organizing principle. You know, why are they here? What purpose are they serving? Because see, this is why it's key when we talk about, you know, one of the things, this is why I said in the beginning yesterday, we're talking about the purpose of the church. Because you'll find people that got all these things about what they think the church is. And some of that stuff is not really supported in scripture of what the church actually is. And so when you go back, this is why it's important to understand vision, shared dream. And when you go back and you begin to look at what the visioning process, talk about the theology for ministry, what you're supposed to be doing, what the supporting foundation is. And so you look at your organizing principle. You know, what's the basis on which you organize? Sometimes you got to go back and find out why you even gathered in the first place. Because sometimes we do forget why we exist. And we get caught up in other stuff that doesn't mean a hill of beans. You know, sometimes it's funny is that we argue a lot of things about what God doesn't care about.
That's true.
And so God is trying to get us to a place of why we exist, and we argue because we don't even know why we exist. Dealing with feelings. Part of the issue, you got to deal with feelings. That is oh so important. You have to hear the feelings. That creates a whole lot of problems if you can't get past that emotional context, which involves feelings. You got to learn how to deal with feelings and begin to understand how to diffuse that emotional context and hear people's feelings and understand and let people know you hear what they're feeling. This is why active listening is important. Just like if you're in a particular, like in counseling sessions, I begin to tell them when couples are going back and forth at each other. I say, what I hear you saying, it sounds like you feel like you're feeling this, and give them a feeling word. They're like, yeah. So now they feel understood. Now they can listen because they understand. I hear what they're feeling. They say, yeah, I feel that way. That's what I'm feeling. Yes. So now you got to begin to deal with those feelings. Where they come from. Why are they feeling that way? Understanding what's going on with those feelings. Why are they coming the way they're coming? Don't discount feelings. Acknowledge feelings. Provide structure. Provide structure. Now, there's several things about this. You got to be clear about several things. And if you're going to take notes on this is what you need to take notes on. When you provide structure, you got to be clear about who is invited to what meetings. Because everybody can't be invited to every meeting. So you got to be clear about who is invited to what meetings. Be clear about when meetings begin and when they end. Now, this is a biggie because you cannot let meetings just drag on, and you need to start on time and finish when you say you're going to finish. Because you can't get everything in a day. You can pick it up later. This says that you value people's time, first of all. When meetings begin and when they end. You got to be clear about what agenda will be at each meeting. Be clear about what agenda will be at each meeting. You also need to be clear about what all the steps will be in the resolution process. What all the steps will be in the resolution process. You also have to be clear about when each group or each person will be heard. When each group or each person will be heard, because believe you me, they're gonna want to be heard. And you need to let them know when they will be heard. You need to be clear about that. You need to be clear about who will make what decisions. Who will make what decisions? Who will make what decisions? And here's another big. Who has the right to vote? I've seen more conflict created in churches because this wasn't clearly stated up front. Who has the right to vote beforehand? You also need to be clear about how any decision-making will be conducted. How any decision-making will be conducted. And finally, you need to be clear about, in providing structure, is the rules of fair and open discussion. The rules of fair and open discussion. So in providing structure, there's several things you need to be clear about. Who is invited to what meetings? When meetings begin and end? What agenda will be at each meeting? What are all the steps? What will all the steps be in the resolution process? When each person or group will be heard? Who will make what decisions? Who has the right to vote? How any decision-making will be conducted? And the rules for fair and open discussion. And lastly, you need to have communication. And communication needs to be clear and outright. And let me say this about communication, because you need to have, I want to say it this way, about 3 to 4 channels of communication. You can do that. You can say it this way. You can be like, okay, that's fine. You can tell them. Tell them from the pulpit, put it in the bulletin, put it on email, put it on text. Okay. And it may sound tedious, because it really does. It may sound tedious because you can say it. A lot of times you say it from the pulpit, they'll hear it. But people have different perception realities. I want to say it that way. There are some people, if you put it in print, they'll pay attention to it. There are some people, if you tell it to them, they'll pay attention to it. There are some people, if you tell it and put it on their phone, they'll pay attention to it. There are some people, if you put it in email, they'll pay attention to it, because then they can be by the computer, then they can log it or whatever. But so you give them over the pulpit, in the bulletin, on email, through text, and through auxiliaries. That's a 5. That's actually 5. through your auxiliary heads, through the pulpit, through the auxiliary heads, through email, through text, so that you give channels of communication, And particularly when you start outlining stuff, you need to have stuff in print. When you're talking about things, especially providing structure, being clear, you need to put that stuff in print. You need to be clear about it, and you need to communicate it orally. When you put it in print, don't just put it in print, communicate it orally as well. You got to have several channels of communication, because everybody just doesn't pay attention to one form of communication. You've got to understand that, particularly when you're dealing with conflict. Everybody does not understand the same channel of communication you do. So you have to use various modes of communication at the same time. All right. So we have any, so far we have any questions? That pretty much concludes. I know there was a lot of information. We got through that. And that concludes everything. And that's all my information there, phone number, email. You can take that information down if you need to contact me. And I'll leave that up for a minute so you can get that. And so if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. Any comments?
And for those who are present, you can also unmute and ask a question. So I'm not hearing any questions. So let me ask one to get the ball rolling then maybe. Dr. Kaufman, when you're talking about, pastor, member, pastor, staff, relationships where there's conflict, there's obviously a power imbalance.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you maybe maneuver through these steps when you aren't the power person, but the conflict is there that needs to be addressed? Does that make sense?
Well, you talking about when there's a power, you talking about when there is a person who is a subordinate?
Yes.
Person? Okay.
Mm-hmm. It's avoidance just.
Well, first of all, I think you should first of all do the biblical thing. You should go to them and talk to them. Okay. That's the first off. That's the first level. And the second level is then what you have to do is bring a second person. What I did, and oftentimes, and when I was at Nicey Grove, when I taught the deacons, we talked about conflict resolution. And oftentimes what happens is that there was a conflict, particularly even with me, what the deacons would do is they would bring them to me and then one deacon would be there. And we would have a discussion so that there would be no he said, she said, and there would be a witness of what anything that was said so we can kind of resolve that process. And so usually, the first thing to do is to go to them, talk to them. Then if it's not resolved, then you bring another party to kind of help find out what the issues are, what are the issues, what can we do to resolve this issue, and then go from there. Because you usually have an issue and people feel something about the issue, and then let's try to resolve it from there.
Okay, thank you. Are there other questions? Feel free to unmute yourself or either put your questions in the chat.
Dr. Kaufman.
Yes, sir.
Do you travel to other places to present this information?
As they say, have Bible, will travel.
All right. So just contact you via email.
You see, you can call me on my cell phone's right there, or email myself. But you can reach me on cell phone or text me or whatnot. Email too is fine, but you can call me and email me. That's fine.
All right, thank you, sir. Great presentation.
Thank you.
Indeed. I suggest to bring in a person who isn't involved, such as a mediator. Okay, there's some comments
Yes.
in the chat here.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. Bring that
Uh-huh.
third person, bring another person in that process.
Unbiased.
Yeah, but you have to, but then, like I said, the first thing is part of the problem is that because we don't want to deal with the person. We got to be mature enough to deal, even if they are a person that's over us or whatnot. We got to be able to come to them and tell them what our issue is. And if they are any kind of secure leader, they ought to be able to deal with the issue without any kind of reprimand. If they're going to give you some kind of reprimand, that tells you who they are up front. If they're insecure, that's going to tell you right off the bat. So then now you bring in somebody else and deal with that. That's the second level. And then of course the third level, the Bible says, then you bring in the witnesses of 2 or 3 and then the church or whatnot. But yeah, you bring in another third party. But yeah, you bring in a second party to kind of resolve this back and forth issue. But you try to go to them first and you let them know what the issue is. You give them an opportunity to resolve this problem.
Right.
Because sometimes it could be they didn't know that they offended you or not.
Right.
And we got to recognize sometimes that it may just be our own insecurity. It could be, 8 to 9 out of 10 times, it could be. That other 10 to 20%, it may not be. But we have to begin to understand, we got to be mature enough and emotionally mature enough to say, hey, this is what happened. I was offended, and this is why I was offended. This is what I had a problem with.
Good deal. I've got a couple things here. One is a question, but I'm going to actually just give some information first because I've gotten questions again about the slides that you presented. And so I just want to reiterate that the slide presentation is in the chat. You can click on it to download. If you have any trouble doing that, then we will gladly email that to you. But the question, I think, to you, Dr. Kaufman, is why is it important for leaders to have a diverse team?
Well, first of all, I want to say it like this: is if you had everybody that thought the same, then you're gonna miss a whole bunch. One of the things, I'm also certified in Myers-Briggs type indicator, if you're familiar with that, and I also do workshops with organizations. I did it when I was in the military. I took all the leadership out and we began to see different personality types, and I will put a chart up and showing the amalgamation of personality types, and there was some absent, and I could tell you what were some of the problems within the organization based off the personality types that were missing, because everybody can't see everything. That's why God made us interdependent. And so you need various people that's going to see various things. You need people that's going to be able to pay attention to details. You need people that's going to be big picture people. You're going to need people that's idea people. You're going to need people that's able to be able to write down the in terms of the structure, that's able to write down the what we call them, the guidelines, the rules, the regulations, the guidelines. You're going to need all kinds of people to help fulfill that team. Because if they all thought like you, you're gonna have a big shortfall. Or if they all look like you, think like you, you're gonna have a big shortfall.
So we have about 15, our alarm just went off. We have about 15 more minutes. Can you mentioned in your presentation about conflict styles.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit more about those different ones, the
Oh,
avoidance.
you talk about competing, collaborating, compromising, accommodating, and avoiding. Well, competing is like my way or the highway. That's competing. Collaborating, we talk about collaborating, which where you kind of bring in people to handle stuff. Compromising is usually, that's kind of self-explanatory. You compromise, you give up some things, you kind of make successions to kind of you give up just for the sake of a win to get it over with, so to speak. Accommodate, you kind of cater to people to help resolve that conflict. And avoid, you just don't deal with conflict at all. And what happens, and part of the danger of a lot of times when you see on the other extremes competing and avoiding, I wish, well, if I had time, I got a chart that shows you. I got plenty of my stuff from my workshop stuff, but what we call the TKI conflict instrument. I have a chart that I can pull up that shows you the spectrum of those 5 conflict modes. But the problem that happens when you get to something like competing and avoiding, those 2 extremes, competing gets to the point to where it's, you just railroad everything. And avoiding is where you don't want to deal with nothing. It gets to that extreme where you don't want to deal with nothing. And that creates a lot of tension and also anxiety, as well as the other one that deals with a lot of anxiety too, because you just railroad everything. But now people can adjust to use those other modes of handling conflict, but there's a natural mode that they actually default to. But in learning different styles, they can learn how to use collaboration, compromising, and accommodating. But there are some, if they depending on what their primary mode is, what they naturally acquiesce to. But that's why those, like in doing a workshop with people and showing them, they can actually learn to use those. But their default one, what they come and assess through the assessment, that shows they default one, but they can learn to use others. It's just not that they're not typecast just to that, but they can learn to use other modes and methods and show how to handle conflict through these other means. And usually what happens for me is what's so funny is, being certified in Myers-Briggs in this TKI conflict instrument. If I do a personality assessment on you and do a TKI assessment on you, I can usually if I look at your personality type, I'm usually probably spot on by your TKI conflict to your assessment conflict by your personality type. It just never fails. I can just kind of see that, how you handle conflict by your personality type. It just kind of, it's funny how that kind of maps out.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So we've got about 12 more minutes. Any other questions or comments? There's still some folk who are not able to download the.
Well, let me say this while it's just, there are no questions. I can say a couple of things.
Okay.
One of the things in understanding this information, this is why even when we talk about pastors who are retiring, we can kind of understand, especially from yesterday, we can kind of understand why it creates anxiety within the congregation, and especially if there's no clear plan. And this is why if there are pastors who are thinking about retiring, what I want to tell you now is lay out a plan ahead of time and get a group together to not only get a transition team, so that you lay out a plan, not just up and retire, say up just 1 year up and retire. Give them a few years to transition. Get a team together to lay out plans as to how when you retire, what y'all gonna do, how you gonna transition, who you get the committee together, so that then at what point are you all gonna call a pulpit committee? What point are you are going to begin to take candidates in, so that at what point you are going to make the transition, so that when you retire, they're going to call the next pastor. At what point? You all have to decide that. There's disadvantages and advantages to all of them, so you need to put aboard pros and cons and weigh those options. But you need to be clear at divulging that, and also beginning to get a committee together to help map that process out, to help reduce the anxiety of the congregation and help reduce the conflict. There's nothing worse than just leaving the congregation in just a static conflict, because guess what? God charged us to be stewards, good stewards.
Mhm.
You know, you're charged for that congregation. You also still charged to be a good steward of that congregation as the pastor. So, you know, I want to say that too, if those of you who are thinking about retiring, get you a team together, get a transition team together, start beginning to prepare and plan so that you don't leave the congregation in a lot of angst and a lot of confusion. That can help reduce that conflict. That's one thing. Churches who are calling pastors, who don't have pastors, who are calling pastors, you know, some of the things we talked about and we alluded to. Be clear about who is on your voting roster. Scrub your list before y'all start getting ready to call preachers and field for pastors and preachers. Scrub y'all voting list. Scrub them. Because there's nothing worse. Before y'all get ready to establish voting procedures, scrub that list and make sure it's clear and it's known. The procedures and the process up front for those who have already been there and at the ministry. Because there's no more confusion that you create. You know, you're gonna run into some head problems, but you got to be clear and steady the path, because remember, the viruses always want to go where they don't belong, and they want to infiltrate the cell and create havoc. And structure is a way to strengthen that immune cell, but leaders have to begin to be mature, responsible, and make those decisions and create a team around you to help that process. You'll save the church a lot of headache in the long run.
That's good stuff. That is good stuff.
You know, and of course, if you need help out, it's okay to call outside help to help you map those out and to help you map out the pros and cons of each process. You know, you can lay out the processes, the pros and cons of each, and then you decide which ones you want based off the pros and cons, whichever ones you like. That would be your decision, but you bring in outside help to help you kind of figure that out.
Okay, I have another question here, Dr. Kaufman. How could the conflict strategies be used in regards to the youth ministry?
Oh, I mean, it's just on a smaller scale. I mean, everything you think of everything that I laid out. Let me say it this way. I wish now if I was in the classroom, that's why I can be in a classroom with a marker board. I can do a drawing board then. I ain't on the drawing board, but
You don't use whiteboard?
yeah, that too. But just think about the church as a big circle and every auxiliary and ministry as smaller circles. And within those auxiliary and ministries are smaller circles. So the youth ministry is a circle, and then you got smaller circles within that youth ministry. So all you're doing now is making that circle smaller. So yes, you can use that. You just got to make smaller pieces within that. That's it. That's all it is. It's just you just got less moving pieces. That's all. You still got moving pieces, but use those moving pieces if that makes any sense. Just size it down, and you got less moving pieces, and you just use the same principles in those moving pieces. You develop strategies, be clear, same process. It's the same process. It's the same process.
And
Reverend Cooper.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Reverend Cooper raised his hand. Reverend Cooper, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Doctor. I know the slides are available for download, but we could benefit by the entire recording, the audio part as well. So is it possible to share that with us?
So let me help with that maybe. I think these are going to be archived on the General Baptist website at some point. I believe. Sessions are being recorded, so we have the audio as well as the visuals here. But I believe they will be archived on General Baptist's website. And I guess with Dr. Kaufman's permission, you can use the whole presentation as you need to. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Mhm.
But I don't think the Zoom is automatically archived. I know if it's Facebook Live, then it'll be there, but I'm not sure about Zoom. But what
Yeah,
you're saying is somehow or another, if we would like the entire recording, it can be made available to us.
Yes, they're being recorded. This is being recorded right now. Yes, the whole session has been recorded.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mhm. And we can check with Dr. Barr to make sure how those will be made available for further viewing. So we have about 4 minutes before our time is up. You can certainly feel free to ask another question, but I want, while we have this moment, to stop and thank Dr. Kaufman for his time and preparation for us. Very, very helpful and meaningful information. We all face conflict almost every day, probably. And so really having these tools that we can kind of reach for and remember to reach for them will save us a lot of heartache. So thank you very much. Y'all join me in thanking him. I know most everybody's on mute, but just thank him in your own way here. Let's see. I will also post the address to help support the convention here before we close out. You can see remarks here. Awesome presentation. Thanks so much for helping us out. Thank you for the wonderful presentation. And we will make sure to get this presentation to those of you who had difficulty downloading from the chat. I will save the chat right now. So if you will, in the next 2 minutes. So if you want to put your email address in here, go ahead and do that before I save it. So I'll have it to distribute those later. But thank you, Dr. Kaufman.
And thank you. Thank everybody too.
Okay. So we have 3 minutes. Any closing remarks?
And anybody, like I said, you all had my slide up. You all have my email and phone number. And so those who didn't get it, my phone number is 704-441-7561. That's 704-441-7561. And you can contact me, text me, call me that way. So I thank you all for being there, and I enjoyed it.
So I'm going to save the chat right now. Let's see, we're still getting a couple of emails in. Okay, well, I'll leave it open for another minute. We have 2 minutes though. Make sure we get everybody. Yeah, still getting them. Been very well attended.
How many people showed up?
We have, even right now, well, we got about 50 right now, but we had as many as 60 at one point.
Okay. Is that how many showed up yesterday too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Plus or minus.
Okay.
5 or 6. Probably more plus though.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, our time is up here, and certainly I'm sure you'll be hearing from some folk, maybe even me. You never know.
That Brother Carpenter. Brother Carpenter, I see you down there.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, then we are going to go ahead and close. I'm going to save this chat first. And I pray that everyone has a blessed remainder of the day and enjoy the rest of the convention. The night sessions are wonderful. All right.
God bless you.
Okay, God bless you.